Hello everyone, my name is Moji. You're watching a Bitcoin bubble news channel. Take a deep breath and do what I think you should do: buy Bitcoin and Ethereum with a 10-year hold and walk away. I think that only very long-term investors, like the foundation I've worked with over the years and the state of Wisconsin, can do that without any problems. They can put away 1% and never have to look at it again. Even though the government says everything is fine, the last few years have made people much less confident in the US dollar. This is partly because the Fed printed too much money in reaction to the COVID-19 pandemic and didn't want inflation to get too high before recognizing the problem. People believe the false idea that the US can print as much money as it wants because it is a giant. Bernstein said that the US government can't go bankrupt because we can print as much money as we need, but he couldn't explain why that would be so bad for the economy. It was clear from the video that policymakers like Bernstein were cocky, didn't know much about the problem, and were biased against recent events. Because people aren't aware of this issue, things could get worse in Japan, where bad economic policies have caused the yen to trade at its lowest level in decades against the US dollar. These experts have found similarities between Japan's 260% debt to GDP ratio and the US's 130% ratio, says Dana Tapiero, CEO and managing partner of 10T Holdings. Tapiero, unlike some other well-known figures in the digital asset space, is not saying that the dollar is going to disappear soon or that it will suddenly lose its value among fiat currencies. However, he does say that Bitcoin's growing popularity and use is a threat to the dollar. Tapiero imagines a time when Bitcoin is the main currency and the dollar is just an option. He talked to Optu with Anthony Scaramucci of Skybridge Capital about the economy of the US dollar, which was made in Bitcoin. If you want to see more videos like this, please like, follow, and turn on post notifications. We'll be posting highlights from the informative conversation. Your work helps the YouTube system and channel growth a lot. Thanks, and have fun. I'm not sure, I don't know enough about AI or NVIDIA to say for sure what it's like that. I believe they will eventually become one, but that's a different subject. I believe everything changed during the summer. Larry Fink says that Bitcoin is a global asset, and it's a very important global asset. He had said 2 years before that Bitcoin was only used for theft and money laundering. This was a big change. I mean, a $10 trillion money manager. Everyone knows about it. That being said, he did not say those things without knowing that there would be an ETF and that they would be one of the main backers. And on January 11th, all 11 of those ETFs came out. That changed everything. When you think about the future, you've basically brought about $50 to $100 trillion in potential capital to Bitcoin through brokerage accounts and stock accounts around the world. In the past, you had to sign up for an account with Coinbase, Kraken, or Gemini. There were some people who didn't feel good about that. All of the people over 50 have stock accounts, traders, and RIAs. Now, with the push of a button, they can hold Bitcoin too. We thought that would be strong, but it's been much stronger in terms of how it's changed people's minds in the space. The reason I can tell you this is because we have never sold our funds before. There is now $1.4 billion in AUM in the 10T1RT funds, which we have never directly sold to US institutions. We have 2 or 3 organizations, but they came to us through acquaintances of mine. Texas Teachers and Michigan's MERS Pension Fund are both big investors. We didn't market to them though. New York-based banks are interested in talking to me about what we do for the first time since I came up with the idea for this fund in the middle of 2019. Also, it's really cool. I've never had that kind of back and forth question. Surprisingly, they're beginning to move quickly, which for a US organization seems like a contradiction. Because of the ETF, their clients are interested in them, which is good for them. You may or may not know this, but we are the only growing equity fund in the world that only invests in crypto, blockchain, Web3, and digital assets. In this way, they know about equity and private equity. So the companies we invest in are more established and make at least $40 to $50 million a year in sales. It's not really a risk. The last thing I want to say is that I believe Bitcoin and Ethereum are well-known and important investments. That's why ETFs will be used. The Ethereum ETF is also a big part of the future, in my opinion. You could say that the other cryptocurrencies are more like business projects or games of chance. Solana might be getting closer to being a core asset, but it's not quite there yet. So I'm very optimistic when the world's slowest part, the US academic world, starts to get interested again. I can see it for myself. Tony, I don't know if you've been seeing it because you're always sitting there in New York. You know, I'm in Greenwich, which is a little outside of Dorado, as I said before. A lot of big tax firms are now taking Bitcoin and other digital monies. Even 2 years ago, no one thought this would be possible. BlackRock is the biggest asset manager in the world, and it also runs the biggest spot Bitcoin ETF. It is in charge of more than $1 trillion in assets. As the FBTC Bitcoin ETF was being made public, Fidelity, a global financial services business, was in charge of assets worth about $5 trillion last month. Millennium Management LLC, one of the largest financial management firms in the world, said it had invested about $2 billion in Bitcoin ETFs. This made it the market leader with the largest investment. Pension plans, hedge funds, insurance companies, and other groups that turned down Bitcoin when it was worth a lot less are now putting money into the space. The talk will go on with a lot more. Tapiro talks about Bitcoin and the US dollar and how he thinks they might swap places in the future. Here are some more chat clips. It's a big buy, and I think there are other institutions going on underneath. I've been directly involved with that. I have said many times that I handle and run the investment committee for a school endowment. And we went from 0% to 1% with that gift, which was the famous Alexis Caceres. He was a rallying point, and people in the space know his name, and this was a $500 million gift, and we put 1% into Bitcoin and Ethereum. In the middle of 2019, we put a little more into a startup fund, and that 1%, that $5 million, is a lot more than, say, $50 million. As you can see, I think we were the first high school fund in the US to invest directly. And I believe we were one of the first high schools or colleges to put money into it directly. And it's made a big difference. We only put 1% at risk. That was it. And it's helped us do better than many, if not most, of our peers. I also believe it is very important for funds to be able to handle the risk of not having enough cash on hand. This is the worst place to be if you want to trade, unless you have 20 people working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I ran a portfolio in the real world for more than 20 years with daily mark-to-market, and I was in the thick of things at a number of hedge funds, including my own. Of course, this is 10 times more complex and hard. The good side is 10 times bigger. However, you need to be active in the details. You can't just sit back and do what I think you should do, which is to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum and hold on to them for 10 years. Long-term clients like the endowment I worked with over the years are the only ones I think can do that without worry. They can save 1%, just like the state of Wisconsin, and never have to look at it. So all of a sudden, it's become between 7 and 10% of the whole business. Look, I think you have the Bitcoin ETF, and we'll soon have the Ethereum ETF. And people who want to know more about Ethereum can read Antonopoulos' book on the subject. Programmable money and smart contracts are pretty cool. You don't understand things right now. In other news, Wiley Wu, an on-chain Bitcoin expert, thinks that Bitcoin will reach $1 million per coin by 2035 because of how quickly it is being used. If we use the user growth curve to figure out how much something is worth, his favorite tweet on Twitter says, "On track for $1 million per Bitcoin by 2035.